to the House by the Video Store podcast.
Groovy. No more Roman hell. The dead will walk here.
We have such sights to show you.
I kick ass for the Lord.
Praise God, big boy.
Welcome to the House by Video Store podcast. I'm your host, William, and joining me today will be Derek.
Hello.
And Sean.
Hello. Did Derek say anything?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
And on this episode, we are reviewing Baby Driver, B-A-B-Y, Baby, the new movie from director Edgar Wright, who directed other films such as Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, and I know we were all big fans of Shaun of the Dead, Scott Pilgrim, The World's End. He was supposed to direct Ant-Man before that got taken apart and handed off to somebody else. But before we do that, we'll go through recent news and things we've been watching. And to kick off the recent news, we're recording this on July 4th. So, too, if you hear the sound of fireworks in the background, that's because we're recording this at night on the 4th of July, and fireworks are going off around the neighborhoods that all of us are in. So, but in terms of the news, there has been a ton of stuff. There's the Alien Covenant DVD and Blu-ray is going to feature nearly 20 minutes of deleted scenes from the movie, which hopefully will fill in some of the issues that we had. But
Following the long tradition of Alien films with tons of extra footage, so they probably built that in. Like, hey, we're gonna have to release a director's cut that's like 40 minutes longer. So
I think the best way to get me to buy the DVD would include a $50 bill in it, so I could pay back for my DVD purchase and the purchase of the 2 tickets for that film. Now I would then buy the movie.
But yeah, so hopefully there'll be more of it. I mean, and two, something that's always interesting to me, and it's something I'm always interested in other people's opinions on it. So when you have a movie that comes out and it has parts of it that are very underwhelming, and then they later release a different edit of it that is a director's cut or that has additional footage in it or a different ending, and it makes the movie overall better. Like, to me, even though there's a version that's better, it's still it's not the canon version. It's not the theatrical version everyone saw. I Am Legend, I think, was a movie where the theatrical version had a terrible ending, and then they had a alternate ending on the DVD and Blu-ray that was so much better than the theatrical, but almost nobody saw it because it was a special feature. And the whole the whole issue with things like that. I know. What was the other movie? Kingdom of Heaven was a movie where the director's cut was far superior, another Ridley Scott film, to the theatrical version. But since nobody really sees these additional versions aside from movie buffs, those aren't really the definitive versions to anybody.
To me, the version that gets released in theaters is the version of the film. I don't care if they go back and whatever you put in the theater, that is the movie.
I mean, it is a version,
But to me, that's the version. It's if that's kind of like you have a sporting event and then the team you want loses. No, get one shot at it, and then you can release subsequent versions. But it's, to me,
it already has a bad taste in your mouth if you don't like it.
You can't.
Well, too.
Yeah. You can't. If I didn't enjoy it, you can't make me enjoy it by putting a better cutout, because it's
Well, too, you have. It's funny that Ridley Scott movies are affected by the director's cuts and stuff, because there's how many versions of Blade Runner? At least 5.
Yeah.
And the theatrical cut is the one that has the kind of lazy Harrison Ford narration, and then there's the director's cut that doesn't have it, and there's a version that has I think some other scenes. There's multiple versions of different movies.
Final cut, yeah.
But if it's a movie where you only ever saw, I saw the theatrical cut of that early, or first, because that was when they used to run on TV. But a lot of movies, especially too, when it's movies that are heavy on CGI and stuff, and they have these alternate cuts, a lot of times the CGI that's in these alternate cuts isn't as good as the rest of the movie, because they didn't put all the budget and money behind it to finish the CG effects to the same extent they did the stuff in the movie, in the theatrical cut. So hopefully Alien Covenant will be improved by having the additional footage out there, because I know Prometheus had some deleted scenes that I thought added to the overall movie, but we'll just have to wait and see what the footage is.
Yeah, I mean, was I higher on this than you, William, on Alien?
Yeah, I gave it like a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I gave it like probably, what did I say, like a 7 or something?
Yeah.
Which I still, but honestly, like when I saw that, I was like, I don't really have any interest in checking out that extra footage. Like, unless I hear it's really good, then I'll make the effort. Like, but from a lot of people. But other than that, like, I do not want to spend the money on that movie to take a chance of making it a little bit better.
My biggest issue though is like he, as a director and producing and whoever makes those ultimate decisions, if you knew that was a problem in the first movie, and there was like stuff that you cut out or you had additional scenes that made it a better overall movie, shouldn't you have tried to include that in this newest film to avoid the problems from the last
Well,
one?
I mean, I know he does have a lot of power behind him, but at the same time, he's probably thinking, oh, I need to keep the runtime down. You know, that's like a huge thing as far as selling tickets, the amount of screenings that can be shown each day. Like, they can lose money if, the film, if they're going to lose like 1 or 2 screenings a day because the runtime's too long, just on a financial level. So they do have more freedom whenever they have these home releases. So it may have been a factor of that, thinking like, hey, we can't do it. And 2, it's hard to get people to go watch a 3-hour movie or however long it ends up being,
Yeah. Well, what if it's just really awkward android sex scenes for like 40 minutes and that's the only deleted footage that they have?
I mean, they could just have like a bonus featurette called Mandroids, where it's it's
nobody wants that.
where it's android sex. But yeah, so we'll keep an eye on that. I mean, I don't know if any of us are going to buy the Blu-ray to watch that. I mean, if there's word of mouth that they're worth watching, then yeah, I might get it. But you'll leave it.
Yeah, I'll rent it. I probably won't buy it to watch, but
Yeah.
I don't see it. I don't see it really. It just had some fundamental problem that I had with it, and it just didn't excite me on a lot of levels. So I don't see a lot of things changing that film. You know what I mean? I don't see some extra footage changing that, just based on the experience I had with it.
Yeah.
Hey, have they made any calls on whether or not just even getting a sequel or not yet?
Not yet. I mean,
I would say it probably isn't.
I mean, there's been like Ridley Scott had talked as if they would, but based on the financials, I don't know that they will see it to be a worthwhile investment, because if it made significantly less than Prometheus, which in and of itself didn't exactly perform as well as they hoped. Like, you would think that would not inspire a sequel, but
Well, the funny thing is I don't think I'll say it. Never mind. I'm just going to skip it.
Okay. Next bit of news. This kind of ties into the fact that everything's kind of being in the film world being sold more on China than America in this day and time, really, on the box office stuff. So there's going to be a Japanese team that's working with China, and they're making a movie called Legend of the Demon Cat, which is a huge horror period piece film that was set over 1,000 years ago during the Tang Dynasty. And according to the website for the production company, the film set took 5 years and $200 million to make, and it includes they constructed an entire city with lakes, rivers, palaces, caves, and additional buildings and things like that. And it's actually going to house people and be an amusement park after the movie's complete. And they've been shooting.
That's really crazy.
The shooting lasted 150 days with over 15,000 costumes, thousands of extras, hundreds of crew, all kinds of stuff. The movie's been called what did I say?
It is Legend of the Demon Cat.
Legend of the Demon Cat. So it sounds like a huge, huge movie. And the synopsis for it is: a Chinese poet and a Japanese monk join forces to investigate a demonic cat who has possessed a general's wife and wreaked havoc on the imperial court. The investigation takes gruesome and unexpected twist, resulting in the monk and the poet unraveling the mystery behind the death decades earlier of legendary beautiful concubine Yang Guifi, or however you pronounce that. And it's going to release on December 22nd, 2017 in China. No word on a U.S. release date. So
a lot of Chinese films too, like, are censored. So it's going to be interesting to see how far this goes.
Because in China, they typically don't like movies that have to deal with supernatural or superstitious
ghosts,
elements.
And even the robot android kissing from Alien, they cut that out, right? Of that release.
Yep. Ghostbusters never got released there because of the supernatural elements.
Yeah, the director too, KJ Chen, I guess. I saw one of his films, Farewell to My Concubine. I saw that a couple times while in college. It was like a 93 drama made in like 93. It's like 3 hours long almost, but it is really, really, really good. Like, there's some standout scenes in that film that still stick with me. And for a drama, like, normally it's thrillers or something like that where I have some standout scenes, but it is very good. So they're not just putting money behind nobody. I think that had some Oscar buzz and stuff. I believe it may have won Best Foreign Film. I'm not for sure, but yeah, that was a very huge. It was a huge film in China around that time.
One thing that I think is slightly disconcerting is that a lot of U.S. films or U.S. produced films are targeting China more than the U.S. And so, like, I haven't seen the new Transformers movie, the what was it called, The Last Night or Knights of the Round,
something like that. Yeah,
Robot
Last
or
Night, I think.
Arthur Bot. Was it Anthony Hopkins saying "dude" or "bro" or something?
Dude, bro.
Or was it Transformers: The Last Night? I don't remember. It looked terrible. I stopped watching those after the second film, but that movie, apparently there was a lot of product placement in it for Chinese products, like Chinese sports drinks and things like that. So if you have all these movies that the majority, like, I think it has a 17% on Rotten Tomatoes, the new Transformers films. So U.S. critics looked at it and said, trash. And it's doing pretty poorly at the box office in the U.S. Because so far, or it's Transformers: The Last Night. And so far, it's made $105 million, which is about half of what the prior film made in the franchise at the same point. And even though it's a lot of money, it's such a huge production, it's going to take a lot of money to break even. But the Chinese numbers are probably going to save it because people over there enjoy it. But it follows the trend because so far it's made $329 million foreign. So it's a worldwide gross of $435 million. The Mummy's another one where the Tom Cruise Mummy, where the box office in the U.S. is kind of underperforming massively, but the global sum is enough that it might be able to get a sequel. And they're planning to make like another 5 Transformers films, I think, like a Bumblebee spinoff and all kinds of stuff. But I think it's a troubling trend when all these movies have these kind of bare bones, nonsensical plots and just throw a bunch of Chinese product placement in it and film sequences in China for no reason and have like additional sequence. I know, like, one of the Iron Man films, they shot additional sequences with Chinese actors to help it be able to be promoted over there. So there's movies that are big, dumb, blockbuster movies that generally aren't well reviewed and are pretty bad. But since they have these different elements of Chinese production or Chinese product placement or actors or locations in it, then they get a lot of recognition over there, make a lot of money. And if we start seeing more and more movies where they're more of just pandering to like the Chinese market without having like good story or anything, like, I think that's a bad trend to continue down. Like, if it's artistic, awesome films that just happen to get a global audience that are made here, that's great. Like, I would love to see that. But if it's just big dumb action films where they drink a Chinese like sports drink or shoot a bunch of scenes in China for no reason, I think that's a bad trend.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think that, like, maybe the market will work its way out, and a lot of the audience members over there will kind of get tired of being fed stuff that maybe isn't necessarily great, but maybe marketed towards them. But then again, it takes American audiences a long time to turn on films that normally aren't that good, or series. You know what I mean? Like, American audiences don't really learn either. It takes them a while. So who knows? Things may change. Maybe in a decade that that audience will get tired of just those big blockbusters that are kind of empty. And then things will shift back, or there'll be maybe more of a focus on quality versus just like you said, being designed around having marketability and foreign for foreign audiences.
Yeah, so I definitely don't want to ever see this new Transformers movie. I didn't watch the fourth one that had because Mark Wahlberg's in both of them. His character's name is Cade Yeager, I think, which makes no sense. But yeah, so
is that all the news?
There's a new trailer that dropped for Death Note, the movie directed by Adam Wingard, that's going to be on Netflix. It's coming out on August 25th, so I'm excited to see that. And I know there been some controversy that, it's an American version in American language, and it's based in the U.S. in Seattle. And there are a lot of fans of the anime and the Japanese films and the manga and everything that are claiming that they whitewashed it by casting white actors. And I've seen like some back and forth with Adam Wingard on Twitter in an interview where, he basically just said, like, we made it for America, so we used, American characters. And they adapt because he said that the more they tried to stick directly to the Japanese manga but set in America, the less it worked well. So they had to update elements to work for the U.S. market. So hopefully, it's just a good movie. But I get people being upset, but it seems like anime specifically, people get incredibly upset the second you change any element of it at all.
Yeah.
Which, I get people being upset about, but I think we've seen it like the comic movies and the graphic novel-based movies and all that stuff that sometimes you do need to take a little bit of artistic license and make a good movie first and then adhere to source material second. So, I've liked the other movies Adam Wingard's made, like The Guest and all that stuff. So hopefully this falls in that trend.
And then, is this going to come out on Netflix? Is this a Netflix produced?
Yes, it's Netflix original. Yeah, so it's coming out in August, I believe August 25th. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. I know that, like I said, some of the anime fans seem to be a bit picky about it, but I'm excited for it. Hopefully it'll be good because, like, the Netflix stuff, and hopefully those movies continue to do well, and then they give directors a lot of money to make stuff that's not really bound to this traditional studio system of, doing all the test screenings and trying to shoehorn in product placement and demographic targeting and things like that. Hopefully that can make more things get made outside of that system where you don't see more stuff like Transformers The Last Night or generic action movie one that just so happens to have a set piece in China so that the Chinese government would co-finance it and let it be released there. Like, I'm not down on China. I'm just down on movies that are terrible using product placement and marketing to sell it versus being a good movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that was kind of the last bit of news.
Well, the only other thing I saw that I must have either just missed or forgot about it. Did you know Edgar Wright's next film is an animated film? It's a DreamWorks movie called Shadows, I think. And he's working with, I just had it open, one of the guys from Little Britain, David Williams, on writing it. Both of them are writing it. So that should be pretty interesting and funny. But as much as I do like animation at times, I also just love seeing what people do with live action because there's so much more. There's more constraints. You know what I mean?
Well, too, something that I think is a little bit sad is that I know, like, when I was a kid, like I'm sure when all of us were kids, and I know Derek for a fact watched different movies like 1,000 times, like all of us did, that were live action movies. Is like when I was a kid, it seemed like people watched live action movies, and you watched animated films, live action. You watched a mixture of it. I probably watched a lot of stuff that was age inappropriate. Like I had a copy of Predator that was rated R on VHS when I was like 7 or something. So, but like, there's a lot of kids now that only watch 3D animated movies.
Yeah.
And I almost think they lose something by only kind of watching those 3D animated films, especially when so many of them are bad and just have like the goofy end credit sequence with just all the creatures or characters dancing to pop songs. Like that's become a trend, it seems like. So animated films I'm excited for. Like Pixar always does good stuff, and like DreamWorks and other studios have released movies that are enjoyable. Well, not Cars, but there's been very high quality animated films released over, the decades. But there's also been a lot of drivel where it's just like animals dancing and stunt casting with well-known celebrities who lend their voice, and it's all just very rote and by the numbers. Like, so that makes me not super excited for a lot of animated films because there's just so many of them. I mean, there's a lot of great ones, and if you get like Edgar Wright involved, or like the stuff like Lego Movie that had like Chris Miller and Phil Lord, is that or that's their names, right? And so like the guys who do like Lego Movie and stuff like that. So you have some stuff like that that's kind of out of left field and surprising and very good. But then there's a lot of like junk that comes out that are sequels of like the Madagascar or stuff like that. But it's when like Edgar Wright's attached to one that I'm gonna be interested to see what it is.
I was also seeing something apparently at one of the Baby Driver like press junkets. They asked if that Grasshopper Jungle. I remember reading about that one, which is like a young adult novel. That he said that was potentially one of his next films. It's one of the couple things I'm developing. So who knows what's going to come next? But always more stuff from him is always welcome.
Yep. So I think that's kind of all the news. We can move into the things we've been watching. So Derek, did you get a chance to watch anything in the past week?
Yeah, I mean, like I had a long weekend, 4th of July weekend. I took off work on Monday too, so I had a lot of time. So I ended up watching Flaked season 2 because that came out earlier in June. I just hadn't had the time yet. Then I also watched the new show they released on Netflix, Glow, which is about like female wrestlers in the 80s.
Was that good? I haven't dug into that yet.
Oh, I absolutely loved it. It's funny because like it's probably I don't watch wrestling anymore like I used to back in the day, but it's probably been over 10 or more years so since I've actually watched it. But it's probably more interesting than actual wrestling. It's
I don't want to knock actual wrestling, but that doesn't sound that hard of a feat.
It's not. I mean, I don't know a whole lot about current wrestling, but I do know from a lot of people I know actually are involved in it that it's not,
I just hear everybody that watches wrestling complain about wrestling. You know what I mean? It seems like they just complain about the writing and everything and kind of the storylines that are playing out. And
because there's like, as somebody who used to watch it, like I've looked into some of the stuff now and it's like I have no interest. It's pretty awesome. I mean, it's super 80s. Every woman in it's got awesome 80s big hair. The soundtrack's pretty awesome in it. It was one of those things where like I kept hearing about it, and I went and watched it, and like just having watched wrestling growing up, I think you can have an appreciation for a little bit more just because they point out such the ridiculousness in it. There's just so many things in there obscure and off the wall, and like. They're picking everybody's like shtick and they just go straight for stereotypes. So if you look Middle Eastern, you're a terrorist. You're Asian, you do comedy.
Oh yeah. You build these characters. Yeah.
And
or you have stuff where like before The Rock got big, his initial one of his initial gimmicks was Rocky Maivia, where he's supposed to be like Italian or something, I think. If I remember correctly.
Hawaiian or something. It was something weird.
Yeah, and then they had like the guy on the Big Show. They had him pretend to be like the son of Andre the Giant for a while, and then like eventually that got dropped, and a lot of weird gimmicks happened over the years.
And like Stone Cold Steve Austin was Stunning Steve, and he had like long blonde hair and was like the pretty boy.
And there was that guy Val Venus that would like always like strip dance with like a towel and stuff.
Yeah,
and his intro music was like "Hello, ladies." I remember that.
Yeah. Well, then you have like Goldust, who was like at the time when he came out in the 90s, he was a heel. Watch wrestling, don't know. Like the heel is generally the bad guy.
Yeah.
But the only reason why he was bad was because his character was like bisexual and he leaned toward the gay side. So that's what made him bad. That was the only thing in his character that made him bad at first was that he may have been gay.
He acted flamboyant.
He acted flamboyant. The other male wrestlers, and then that's what made him a bad guy. And then they kind of dropped that, sometimes. They kept it in there, but not as heavily as they had done it at first.
I guess you guys probably saw that wrestler. I think it's here in Kentucky. His name's
liberal?
Yeah, the progressive liberal.
Yeah. Sorry, the progressive liberal. And it's a guy that wears a Hillary shirt and like, everybody hates him.
Just imagine somebody goes out and they're like, "We want free healthcare for all." And he's like, "Boo."
Well, apparently, too, I was reading like something. It was one of the guys we know that I think it may have been Jason Crow. He's worked with us on Hazard and stuff. And it was about that post, but I don't want to say this the wrong way because it's a wrestling place in Mexico. I don't want to miss the name of it. I think it's Lucha Libre.
Yeah.
is just an American dude that wears a "Make America Great Again" shirt, like a Trump supporter, and that's who they boo at. So it's kind of funny just to see, like, it's just very stereotypical, you know? And so it's a thing we've been doing here forever in wrestling. You know, okay, you look different. Well, now you're this ethnicity and you're the bad guy. So it's funny that other places do that too, just because the guy. I think this guy's like in the crowd and they always boo him.
Yeah, but wrestling. I've heard about Glow. I meant to watch. I just haven't had a chance to yet.
I mean, it's awesome. I mean, if I had to give it like a score, you know, it's not perfect. It's got down, but it's like 8, 9 out of 10. You know, it's really fun. It goes by pretty fast. The cast is what makes it so great. You know, because all the women make it pretty believable. Because when they first start off, you know, they're just all hopeless with wrestling. And then, you know, I think one thing that makes the show enjoyable too is from what I've read, like a lot of the women actually did their own stunts and wrestling in it. You know, so I think that makes it a little bit more interesting to know that like, you're actually seeing these people, you know, what they're doing is probably as real as the real thing. Yeah. You know, which is fake. But I'd highly, especially if you're a wrestling fan, you know, it's just fun to kind of see like that take on it. And even if you're not, like it could give you an appreciation for something that is so ridiculous. Because that's what, at the end of the day, that's what makes wrestling fun. And like if you go back and look at some of the story arcs from like the mid to early 90s and late 80s and all that stuff, like the ridiculous arcs is what kind of makes it fun. Like the stereotypical crap they always do, that does make it kind of fun. Because like one of the black women, she's an actual wrestler, but anyway, on the show she's the welfare queen. So her shtick is that like she just sits in the ring and doesn't do anything, you know, and like they're uneasy with it. So it's just funny because she's like, my son goes to Stanford. I don't want to. So it's just really fun to see it because, you know, like those people are really in those situations in real life. Like you go look in the history of wrestling, there's not many gimmicks that would shock you, you know?
Yeah.
So is that it, Derek?
I just want to say one other gimmick I love. They have the Beat Down Betties, which is 2 women that kind of dress like characters from the Golden Girls that beat people up. And I love that too.
And then I know as far as things that I watched, I know Sean, you and I both watched Okja, the new movie.
Did you get a chance to watch it?
Yes, I watched that with Julie yesterday, and that's available to watch on Netflix. Watch Instant. It's on there as one of their Netflix originals, and it's from Bong Joon-ho, who also did The Host and some other films. So you can check that out now if you have interest in it.
Did you guys like it?
So I enjoyed it. Like I thought that it was, and I like so just to give background too, it's basically about a young girl and like her grandfather are farmers, and they have like this super pig, and it's like given to them by like a big multinational corporation that then wants to use these super pigs to create pork in like large amounts of it from an animal that creates less waste than a normal sized pig, and it provides way more food because it's larger, and than her trying to save it.
Yeah, they basically come back and kind of let it grow for a while and send all of them out all across the world to figure out like who basically can grow the biggest one. And then they go to take it to a festival, and it's kind of her journey to like get it back, because it is like, it's not just like a meat product to her, it is her friend. You know, she grew up with it for like 10 years. So it's very much just like any pet anybody would have.
And the cast includes Tilda Swinton, Jake Gyllenhaal, Giancarlo Esposito, Paul Dano, Stephen Yeun. So there's people that you will recognize in this, in addition to
the grandpa, the grandpa from The Host also plays a little girl's. Is it her grandpa or uncle?
Or her, I believe it's her grandpa.
Yeah, okay.
And then, of course, you know, they're more... Because the movie is partially in English, partially in Korean.
Which I really loved. I liked that it kind of... It felt... I don't know, it felt natural. You know what I mean? Like, it was... what it was supposed to be. It wasn't anybody trying to speak English when you thought they shouldn't be, or vice versa, you know?
And like, so basically too, like, so you have the element of it's kind of about the meat industry to some extent. And like, so I eat meat and, you know, always have, But like Julie is a pescatarian, so she, only eats fish and then otherwise is a vegetarian. Eats like animal products like eggs and milk and things like that, but doesn't eat like red meat or poultry or chicken or turkey or anything like that. So like she thought it didn't go really far enough in some of the elements where it shows because it shows like elements of like a slaughterhouse at some point, but it's actually the idealized version of how slaughterhouses should work in the U.S.
Yeah.
But in reality, they are almost never that clean and or effective. They're usually worse and involved conditions far worse than what was presented in the movie itself. So that was, it still got across the point, but it really wasn't as terrible as some of the conditions are in the real world now. And like, and two, so like, there's multiple stuff going on. There's also like, there's a group in it that's called the AL
ALF, Animal Liberation
Front
Front,
or Foundation, whatever, that is like trying to save animals from captivity and things like that. So there's all these different elements
and
going on.
they're almost like a satirical take on PETA almost, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they're not necessarily made fun of totally, but like everything is satirized a little bit in this film.
Well, there's
even kind of the good guys at times.
And then the character that Paul Dano plays, when I saw it, like when he first shows up, he very much reminded me of the spy character from Team Fortress 2, the online multiplayer shooter game.
Yeah. And his little, his like tight fitted suit.
And so there's like stuff like that, and he had like a ski mask on and stuff. So there's elements that are kind of goofy. And then there's parts of like that. And I think that overall having those kind of goofy elements kind of hurt the serious message aspect of trying to get across that, like, I mean, granted, so the creature in these, like the movie, the super pig that is Okja, like, is a much smarter animal than really exists in nature anywhere. Because it's able to figure out how to like use inertia and physics to save somebody, and there's all these different things it's able to do that in real life an animal couldn't be really intelligent enough to do. A lot of people aren't smart enough to do. So that kind of gives you a little bit of cognitive dissonance, and that it's a CGI character that's really smart.
Yeah. For me, it feels like almost like an adult like storybook. Like it has a lesson, it has some fantastical elements, but like the message it's delivering is very true and honest at the same time. You know what I mean? But you also have a lot of these fun elements that are in the film. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of goofy stuff in there, and that does kind of come along with your taste of the director. Like I've talked about him a lot on this podcast. Like he's one of my favorite directors working right now. And that's kind of always been his thing, where he'll go a little goofy and kind of almost make fun of some of the characters. And like Jake Gyllenhaal, like I loved his character, especially, I worked in TV, so his character has like a really whiny, like annoying voice, but when he's on camera, it's like totally, he has his TV voice and stuff. Like I love those moments. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of like goofy, quote unquote, goofy moments. And I heard some people it not really working all the time for them. For me, like I loved all those. Like I was laughing my ass off in this film.
Well, I thought the Jake Gyllenhaal stuff when I watched it, it's one of those things where I think like a South Korean director probably has a different take on comedy than an American director would. And the stuff that Jake Gyllenhaal, I mean, it looked like he was having fun.
Yes, yeah.
But it felt very much like a different culture through an American lens. And then like a lot of the female characters did a thing like where they buckled their knees in, kind of like the girls do like an anime. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of like stylistic elements like that. So I know like Derek, you were not a fan of The Host, and I don't think this would do anything to win you over.
No, I found The Host to be boring.
Again, it is one of those things where it's like the more you're kind of exposed to, like a different, I guess, like film language from like different cultures and stuff. You know what I mean? If you have watched maybe a lot of South Korean films or whatever, some of this stuff would be easier for you to digest, I think, than if you were to just like jump in. Because there's just certain things that, it's like you can kind of tell, you can easily tell this is not an American director. You know what I mean? Because like the stuff you're pointing out for sure. And I feel like Snowpiercer, a lot of people like love that film to death. and that was his first American language film. I liked it a lot, but I didn't like it nearly as much as pretty much all of his films that he made in South Korea. This film, his second like mixed American language film, I feel like he did a better balance on this one, and this is one that I will probably definitely watch a lot more than like Snowpiercer.
Yeah, I mean, and it kind of reminded me to some extent of like Spielbergian type E.T. story, things like that, with the added twist being essentially that like this young girl befriended a character that was intended to be used as it's the property of a multinational corporation, intended to be used for food production. So theoretically, you should have came away from the movie and at least thought about the process of eating meat and what happens. Not that this would be a movie that's like on the same level as some of the different documentaries that have been made about the meat industry, or books that have been written about it. It's not going to that level of depth. It's just kind of putting a little bit of a face on the fact that the things that you're eating a lot of times at the dinner table were living, breathing creatures that had some level of intelligence and could have, been somebody's pet in a different circumstance. And a satire of, I guess the meat industry and all. Like it really kind of pokes fun at a lot of things at once. For me, yeah, I mean, I've always been an eat meat or two. I'm not going to change. But, I was in the grocery. I was like, maybe we should get free range eggs. You know what I mean? Like it did make me think a little bit like, okay, yeah, maybe it would be good to pay attention to kind of what we're buying sometimes more. And yeah, if you're looking for purely informational stuff and want the gritty reality, there's obviously better resources. But I think this is exactly the type of film you're talking about, where films that aren't just superhero films or films that are marketed for a Chinese audience or something like that. Like this is the original film that they're taking risk on. And the fact that like, I don't know of any other kind of film of this caliber or budget that tackles the issue of kind of the food industry like this. Yeah. I mean, it did allow them to get a movie made that has a lot of CG in it and had a decent budget, and wasn't a 4-quadrant big summer blockbuster that would appease like parents and children and all these different groups. It had a message. Whether or not it landed appropriately depends on how you view the movie. But this is not a movie you would see coming out of a major studio.
Yeah, and for me too, it was also like it was like a sweet film. Like even if you just want to look at it as a girl and her relationship with her, her pet. Like if you just want to look at it like that, like I think it is stellar. And again, it's super funny. Like Baby Driver, I know, he traded in his comedy for a lot of action there, and that was intentional, I think. And it's not like he was going for big laughs on that all the time, but like I laughed way more in this than that. So it's, even though this is about that subject, it's not super dour or depressing or anything. It's a sweet film too, it's definitely, again, I'm a huge fan of the director, but it's definitely one of my favorites of the year already.
Yeah, so like if you enjoyed The Host or Snowpiercer, or if you enjoyed the kind of South Korean films, I definitely recommend checking it out. Or, if just you like the idea of kind of E.T. type story told through a different lens than the traditional like Spielbergian American filmmaker mold, like you can check it out. Like I thought it was good, not great.
Yeah.
Like it was entertaining, it was interesting, and it'd be something I recommend people to check out. But it's not like a home run, like, oh, you've got to watch this. It'll change your viewpoint on stuff. It was more of just like, if you watch it after the first like 30 minutes, if you're not sold on the style, you probably won't come around to the end of it. But
yeah. And it's, again, it's on Netflix, so it's free to watch.
What's including your subscription?
Yes, yeah. If you have Netflix, it's included on there. Another, like, The Host is on there, which I'm a huge fan of that, but also Mother is on there as well, and that's like more of a, I don't want to just blanket say Hitchcock thriller, but it's very much kind of a thriller with some twist, and it's almost it's about a mother who has her son is maybe a bit disabled. I don't know. He's not all there, but basically he's accused of murder, and it's almost like a she's trying to solve this mystery of like who killed this person. So, but it's like an older mother doing it. You know what I mean? So it's an unconventional kind of hero, I guess, throughout the film. And it's also about like a mother's love for her kid and what they'll do for it and stuff. And it's a really good thriller as well. And that's also on Netflix to watch. That came out. I think that was the last South Korean film he did before he did Snowpiercer.
Yep. So, did you have a chance to watch anything else?
I finally watched Heat because that was 10 cents to rent on Amazon.
What movie?
Heat.
Oh,
Michael
Heat,
Mann.
the Michael Mann film. Yes,
yeah, I've been talking to you about forever. Oh, you did? Yeah, I've been talking to you forever. Like, oh, do you got a copy of Heat? Yeah, awesome film. I'm sure plenty of people have seen it already, but I kept waiting for the supposed like new Blu-ray release because apparently there was a dialogue change on a telephone conversation on one scene, and the transfer wasn't good, and all this stuff. I think they may re-release it since then, but just one reason or another, I just never got around to it.
Because the new Blu-ray just came out recently. Because I had pre-ordered it, and it came out like a month ago or something.
Yeah. So I watched that because it was 10 cents. Very good. Then after that, I was like, all right, I kind of want to see some more Michael Mann stuff. So I started watching Miami Vice. Not the movie, the original show, which I've seen that pilot a couple times, and I love that pilot. And I've just been watching some of those episodes on Hulu, and then watched Logan again. Finally got Nicole to watch that, but she kept saying, no, I don't want to watch it like week after week. And then we were at like a 4th of July thing the other day, and people were talking about it. And I was like, I've been trying to get her to watch it. And then so we watched it, and like, I don't know, maybe like she was like watching it and I think enjoying some of it, but like 40 minutes to the end, she just like started getting on her phone, like after like some big moments in the film. And it was like, all right, this is getting boring. And then like towards the last scene, she was just on her phone. She was checked out. I think it was probably maybe running a little bit too long and kind of, I don't know. You know, I like that film a whole lot. It's probably one of my favorites of the year, but it's still, I think maybe the road movie element to it, where it's traveling, you know, like there's some great scenes in there, but maybe that's why she kind of checked out a little bit. And I can see that the last part of that film is not my favorite. It has some great moments in it, but I definitely think the first like 40 minutes of that is the strongest.
Yeah. Yep. So if that's it, then we can move into our review of Baby Driver, which has done pretty well at the box office, which I think is going to be Edgar Wright's. It was the biggest movie he's ever had in terms of like opening weekend grosses. And so that's good news. So far through Monday, July 3rd in the US, it's made $35 million, which is more than I think most of the other movies he's made in terms of their entire run in the US, and has a worldwide gross currently of $41 million or almost $42 million off a budget of 34. So it looks like it's on its way to be his biggest movie and the most profitable. So that's good. But the basic plot behind Baby Driver, I mean, the name alone kind of tells you what you need to know, in that it is a driver named Baby.
Like Boss Baby, but a heist film.
There are all kinds of jokes about the Boss Baby and how Baby Driver was a sequel to Boss Baby, but not really. But according to IMDb, after being coerced into working for a crime boss, a young getaway driver finds himself taking part in a heist doomed to fail. So we'll do the review without spoilers and cover spoilers at the very end. And the movie is classified on IMDb under action, crime, and music, which is an interesting categorization. But the movie has a ton of practical car chase effects and shootouts. The cast includes Ansel Elgort, who's Baby, has John Bernthal, John Hamm, Kevin Spacey, Isa Gonzalez, Lily James. So it's got a ton of people in it, and if you don't recognize who they are, so Isa Gonzalez, I completely forgot that she was on the From Dusk Till Dawn TV series, the one on El Rey.
Oh yeah,
as the Santico.
I saw somebody bringing that up or something.
Yeah, and then like John Hamm's in it, and John Bernthal, who was the Punisher, and all that. So the guy Ansel Elgort apparently was one of the actors who auditioned for the Han Solo spinoff film and didn't get it. But in this movie, he wears stuff at times that resembles Han Solo, like a jacket that's kind of like white and black, kind of vest-looking thing. So like a parallel there.
And he was in The Fault in Our Stars, which I did not see. I've never seen him in anything aside from this.
Yes, neither have I. So Yeah, so the movie, like, it's kind of a blend of genres, and it's also got Jamie Foxx in it and a ton of people. And the trailers for this, like, sold it, like, hopefully, I know before, like, with Drive, the trailers for Drive kind of sold it as something it wasn't. It sold it as kind of like a Fast and the Furious style action film, when it was a much different film than that, like, when you actually sit down and watched it, as opposed to this. I think they sold it, pretty accurately compared to what it is. I know a lot of people said the trailer they thought was terrible for it. Like, I thought the trailer was pretty decent.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good. Like, I was really excited for it. I mean, just knowing it was Edgar Wright and kind of the concept behind it, the kind of action musical thing. But the bad part is the trailer. So many good moments in the trailer are in the film, and they're kind of big moments, and that was a big bummer, actually.
Yeah, it gave away like one of the big laughs in the trailer, and but currently the movie on Rotten Tomatoes is sitting
97.
Yeah, it's a 97% currently out of 204 reviews, and the movie actually made more at the box office this week than Transformers: The Last Night, which is encouraging considering that movie's only in its second weekend.
Movie, like, I loved it. I mean, I'm just gonna show my hand up front. Like, I absolutely loved it. It's not a new movie. Like, again, this and Drive pretty much covered the same exact storylines. There's some differences, but overall, it's essentially the same story. There's not much variances.
A driver that doesn't talk much finds a girl.
Bad, like that's. And those two movies are just like 500 other movies, but what makes movies better than other movies, or for one, is just sometimes the experience that it sells you, the actual differences in between the two stories.
Well, it's the execution, really, of the ideas.
Yeah, the execution. Yeah. And it's the ideas and the execution of this movie is what, to me, made it so great, because it's a refreshing, fun movie. Actually, because a lot of times when I go to movies, me and Courtney go to them on Friday nights. And I've went to a couple of William on Friday nights too, because it's just easier for me to go on Fridays, but I get off of work late. So a lot of times we go to movies, even like real big. Even when we went to see Wonder Woman, which was a much bigger movie than this, there wasn't many people in the theater. But for this, I was kind of surprised because it was like a packed house on Friday at like 10:30.
Mm-hmm.
Odd for me anyway, but like. Seemed like everybody really enjoyed it. I think the best thing, though, I can say for this movie is there's no fat in this movie. My memory is I saw it Friday night. Like, I don't remember seeing anything in this movie afterwards. Like, well, they could have went and cut that out, because it seems like it's not a very long movie. It's not one of these movies that's 2.5. Like, every superhero movie now that comes out, or comic movie, is like over 2 hours long.
Yeah, this is under 2 hours.
Yeah, and it's an hour and 53 minutes.
Yeah. So, but it goes by so fast, and it's constantly moving. It doesn't stall out. There's really not any part in this movie where it just drags on over anything. And I think that's a huge thing, because a lot of movies just cannot do that. They have 2 hours, but you might feel like you've been in the theater for like, I watched Alien Covenant, I felt like I was there for 5 hours. This, I felt like I was there for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but you want more at the end of it. Have a refreshing take on like an old story.
Yeah.
And I love the musical elements of it too. Just the songs they use and stuff. Because some of it was like with Guardians of the Galaxy, this song, you're going to like this movie now. Like, I hate that part of it, because it's like, yeah, I know a lot of it, but this movie, like, I know a lot of like, older classic music. I didn't know a lot of the songs in this, but they all worked really well. They weren't super popular songs, but I think that's credit to them as like picking songs that work best for what they're wanting, and not just always going for these really well-known songs.
Yeah, it's not like an easy get on a lot of them, and it's not something that, even though this is a well-worn story, you're not seeing an action scene with the same track you've heard 1,000 times.
It's not pulling a Suicide Squad and having current pop songs or super well-known songs like every 8 minutes. Like, the movie is discussed partially as like a music film or a musical, because almost all of the action is choreographed out to music, to the point that the action beats line up with different parts of the song. And that was by design, where Edgar Wright like storyboarded the movie out specifically to coincide with the music, versus just shooting a bunch of stuff and then lining it up with the music and editing. It was, painstakingly planned so that the
And
action beats
choreographed.
and choreographed so they go with the music, and it's all diegetic music. So like in the movie, the character Baby listens to an iPod because when he was a kid, was in a car accident. They claimed his parents, and it left him with tinnitus in his ears where he has like a ringing. So he uses the music to drown it out. And it almost is like a movie too, where it treats the iPod as like a mixtape, because he has iPods that have certain songs on them that he listens to while he drives, and he needs the music to help him like rhythm out or time out his driving. He even like starts the song over when somebody takes too long or something, just to kind of get it back in line. And like Derek said, the songs are a lot of deep tracks. It's not super well known songs for the most part. Like there's some here and there that I'm sure people have heard, but the majority of the songs are not like Blitzkrieg Bop or big super well known songs or current rap songs or anything like that. So that just kind of gives you the element of you hear music that you haven't heard before, but like some music I think Edgar Wright had like heard like years ago and planned to use it in a movie and already started working on like how to map something out to it, and it shows, and that the music does work well to the scenes they're using.
Yeah,
So,
I think he'd been like had this idea, like well before Shaun of the Dead. I think he'd been thinking about it for a very, very long time.
And it's one of those things where, like, I think that the music element makes this stand out because, like you said, or like I said, there's like diegetic music. So, like in the movie, he'll start listening to stuff on the iPod, and then that plays over the scene. But it's not like an in-your-face, annoying type thing because there's still other sounds in the movie. Like you still hear car sounds and other characters talking, but it just adds to the elements of it. And then like the car chases are like, it looks all practical. Like there wasn't CG or CG cars getting dropped or background replacements or a bunch of like you never see a character push the pedal down, the gas pedal, and then see like CGI flames like inside the engine as the gas goes through. You don't see that garbage. You just see like a car driving and stuff interacting in the real world.
It's way more. Yeah, it's more grounded than a lot of summer action films featuring car chases.
And then like the supporting characters like John Hamm and Jamie Foxx and all those, like they're great too and bring a lot to the movie. And two, like I've seen some people say that some of the dialogue scenes were kind of Tarantino-esque, and I definitely get that.
I thought I saw somebody saying like, what, comparing Tarantino? Like for me, it was just crime dialogue. Like I'm not saying that in a bad way, but I'm saying I never felt like he was ripping Tarantino or anything.
Well, no, I mean, I don't think
he was doing a crime film,
Maybe what I'm about to say is sacrilegious. I don't know. But honestly, to me, if I was Edgar Wright and I put out this great film and they compare it to Tarantino's current work, I'd be like, fuck y'all. Well, because like Hateful Eight was so boring that if it's like that's still like, no, that movie is boring. There's nothing good about it. The dialogue was too much, too asinine, too full yourself.
That's one man's opinion.
Like
everybody.
Well, I think.
To it.
Well, I think
this one, I think the dialogue was just mainly told. It told the story that needed to be told, and it didn't go too far.
Well, I think
you knew what you need to know.
What's funny with, not to get on too much of a tangent, but Tarantino, when I believe it was when he saw Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, the David Lynch film, he had said something to the effect of David Lynch is like his head has gone up his own ass or something to that effect, like saying he had become too self-indulgent.
The pot calling the kettle black.
And then I would think that regardless of whether or not you loved or hated Hateful Eight, I think everybody had to admit, even Tarantino, that was a very self-indulgent film. Mm-hmm. And you could argue his head had gone into himself, possibly through the rear end.
Yeah, no, it did. His head was up his ass.
Speaking of which, congratulations. I think he just got engaged or married to his girlfriend. Congratulations, Tarantino, if you're listening.
So, I enjoy a lot of his movies, and Hateful Eight I just thought was a bit long, but
I haven't felt the need to watch it again.
Because you got to dedicate like 5 days to watch it.
Yeah, I mean,
what's like one of those
a decade ago, I was buying any Tarantino film that came out the day it came out, and I'm not at that point anymore. I bought Django, but I didn't really watch it many more times, maybe once, and then we'll watch some scenes on TV. Hateful Eight, I liked more, but I also, as much as I liked that film, I liked watching it kind of one time. You know what I mean? And I'd probably like to watch it one more time in a few years. But yeah, it doesn't. It's nothing that has a lot of sizzle to it as far as a lot of spectacle, really. But that's fine. It's not that type of film. But anyway, we digress.
Yeah, but
I like the dialogue in this film. I felt like everything in this film to me, if like I said, I didn't feel like there was any fat.
Well, too, the point though about like I think the Tarantino comparisons came solely in the fact that you have like some of the chatter with like Kevin Spacey when he's doing like the setup for the heist. It's kind of like stylized dialogue between the characters, and I guess you could
Spacey,
but you could see I'm just saying, like in general, you could see a parallel to someone saying that's kind of like similar to Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, and that you have kind of fast talking guys setting something up, and then you also have kind of like slice of life conversation or discussions going on in these situations with characters that are all kind of heightened characters, and I could see that comparison. But I didn't really get the same feel or vibe at all.
Yeah.
In the late 90s, early 2000s, you had a ton of movies that were trying very hard to be Tarantino ripoffs, and it showed. I mean, you had movies, what was that one? Lucky Number 11 felt like a huge like Tarantino ripoff. And there's so many things, like even Boondock Saints. I know that everybody loves that movie, or a lot of people do, but it just felt like trying to be Tarantino really hard. And there's a lot of movies that tried that and failed, and even like you could argue Tarantino's more recent work may not live up to the standard he set, but this to me didn't feel like that at all. I think it's just a very surface level comparison if anyone was to make it.
It feels like somebody maybe not totally familiar with Edgar Wright's work also, because everything in his kind of catalog of films and stuff is always very snappy, whether it's the camera work, the editing, the dialogue, rapid fire jokes, you know what I mean? Like that's just been his style.
And he's referencing films that Tarantino would be referencing. If anything, it's not really referencing those who have referenced them, because he is kind of like a mix-up artist with all the things he references in his films.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, too, like the movie's set in Atlanta. So even though a ton of movies are shot in Atlanta in this day and age, like it is nice to see stuff that takes place in not like New York, not in, because it's partially shot in New Orleans too, but like it was one of those movies where it's not set in LA, New York, or big city with like huge budget. Like it was all kind of a contained story, and I believe the movie was shot on film too. It was shot on 35 millimeter.
I think so. I think I saw him mention that.
Like a Panavision. So that is a Kodak Vision 3 250D and 720 or 7207. So that was like the film stock or whatever. But like it had like a good texture and look to it.
Bill Pope shot this, by the way, who he worked on him. I think he worked on Scott Pilgrim with him. And he did like Spider-Man 2 at least, the Matrix films. He's done a bunch of stuff. Great. Yeah, it's a great looking film.
And I think that a lot of times that seeing something like this shot on film with practical effects gives it a much more realistic feel than stuff that's shot on digital with like a lot of compositing and CG effects going on. So it just had a more visceral feel to the movie, and it didn't have a bunch of scenes of just like sped up footage or overcranked footage of like a car to make it look like it's going faster than it really was. I'm sure there was some of that going on. Like a lot of the scenes you increase the speed a little bit just to make it look faster. But even like Mad Max Fury Road, which did that to an effect that I liked, you can still tell that was what was happening. But like I think this is kind of like this year's Mad Max Fury Road, in that it's a movie that has a lot of like practical action going on, and it has downtime, but there's a lot of forward momentum in it. And it's a very pure genre film. It's not really, there is like a romance element to it with the relationship between Baby and Deborah, but it's not like, that is a lot of the movie gets hung on in terms of the story and the plot. But the story and plot are very straightforward, really. It's just like the driver Baby has to do heist, and then he has to do one more, which is, always the type of story that movies like this cover. But it's the execution is what's the difference, and like the music and all the timing and the performances you get, and you get someone like John Hamm, pardon the pun, hamming it up at times to good effect, and you have like John Bernthal,
but for a good way.
Yeah, in a good way that matched the tone of the movie. And was interesting. And then Jamie Foxx was a character that had a lot of on-screen presence and was somebody that you would not want to meet in real life. If like his character was pretty convincing, and there's all these different elements going on in it that I think just kind of set above just a standard genre film because you have all this mashed up of different elements and music, but still it's straightforward and it's not something I think the average movie fan would have trouble grasping onto.
Yeah. So, he's one of my favorite directors. This was top of my list. This was like probably top of my list as one of my most anticipated of the year, along with like Blade Runner, and Okja too. I was very, very, very excited for that. But like for me, unfortunately, I was I was a little disappointed, and really it was because I had the bar set so high, because he is one of my favorite directors, and just the concept behind it, like I was fully in on it. I think like Jamie Foxx and Kevin Spacey and John Hamm, like when they're all in the film, I think it is phenomenal. Like the back half of this film is very, very good because that's when kind of things really hit the fan and they are brought to the forefront more. So, I kind of told Derek too, I was like, I had some issues with it. And really, depending on, I think if I watch this film more, that I might like really get into some of these tracks and stuff. And this is not a bad thing. I agree that I think it's good that they went with that he went with some tracks that maybe wouldn't be the first things you think of, or tracks you've never even heard before. I really like that. So if I watch this film a lot, I can see myself really kind of learning those songs and loving them. And maybe it ranks this film like way higher than how I feel it is right now. I could definitely see that happening.
I like too, with like using the offbeat stuff is like you're now somebody's going to go into this movie, go look up artists they've never listened to before.
Yeah.
And then you're going to find like an entire new style of music or just a list of stuff you've never heard and you really love. So I like that. And to me, it feels more organic because like William said, taking a dig at Poop Squad, like, over their song. Yeah. And it's like, I'm not stupid. Give me something that maybe I haven't heard, but is still just as good.
Well, and the cool thing too is like now people are going to identify these songs with this film, because if this is where they found it or this is where they've heard it a lot. So like, I think a lot of, the choreographed action I think is really good. I honestly sometimes was expecting him to do some things maybe I didn't expect with it. And it didn't really do anything that's surprised me too much. Like Fury Road like blew me away in about every aspect. This, it kind of was almost what I was expecting, and I was expecting more because of that. Like a lot of games now have like procedural soundtracks and stuff, and it's a different thing, but I'm kind of used to sometimes even the music timing out to some of the action and certain things. Like that's not a totally new thing to be done on this level in cinema. Yeah, it's not seen, and some of those moments are amazing. But honestly, some of the chase scenes though kind of didn't get me on the edge of my seat, like Fury Road or like the end of Death Proof. Really, I thought they were good and they were definitely above average, like absolutely. But there was just something about them, some like intangible thing that kind of, I don't know, it didn't make me feel like I was in the car. And that's what I think some of the best chase scenes do is, or like Fury Road, when you feel like you're on like the tanker with Max, or on the front of the car with him. Like it kind of gives you that vibe. Or when you feel like you're hanging on the front of the car in Death Proof with Zoe Bell or in the car with them. This never gave me that feel. I never felt like I was like in it and kind of hanging on, for my life or anything like that. That being said, I'm not saying it was done poorly at all. It just didn't hit me on that same level as those films. And I would have liked that. And I would have liked for it to kind of dazzled me and kind of done some things I wasn't expecting with it. And like, that's a minor thing, you know what I mean? Like it's still great and awesome. And I still he obviously pulled off something that, no other director really has tried to do yet. Which he seems to be able to like go at anything and really nail the execution. whenever he goes for a film or tries to even something like Scott Pilgrim, where he brings kind of the animated world to life, which felt like it was something totally new the way he presented in that film. My biggest issue with the film, though, really is Baby. He just really wasn't. I mean, the backstory they kind of give him is totally fine, and it's very straightforward, but it kind of presents that thing where it's like, okay, let's show you a flashback. And I'm not saying that's totally terrible and that's a completely competent device, but almost from Edgar Wright, I would expect him to kind of do something else with that. Like even in Spaced, and granted he didn't write Spaced, but they would poke fun of that. Like Simon Pegg's character and Nick Frost's character, like they would allude to something that happened in their childhood, and they would go to the cheesy flashback, and then would like make fun of that. Like there were some things in here that were more straightforward than I was expecting, and it made it a little bit unexciting. And it was like, okay, this is just a normal trope or whatever. And I always expect Edgar Wright to kind of turn things on its head a little bit more. Even something like Hot Fuzz is like a cop film, but what's funny about it is it's, it kind of points a lens at American cinema, but everything about it is funny because it's all reflected back in this small town in England, so it's like everything is a joke in that film because it's all these things you've kind of seen before, but in this small town in England. So it's all kind of almost meta in certain ways, but also serious. This is kind of none of that. It's more straightforward. And then, you brought up Drive. It didn't really make me think of that in any way, but I get what you're saying, Derek. The difference with Drive and a lot of these other films is that the leading man is always like kind of magnetic. You want to watch them, or leading person, but normally it's a man in these films. And they've just got something about them, and they've got an awesome presence on screen. Even silent protagonists in a lot of films like Clint Eastwood, they've just got something about them, and you gravitate towards them, and you're just in on this character, and you kind of they're doing a lot without saying anything. I feel like this Ansel Elgort, I think he is the weakest lead character that Edgar Wright has ever had in his films. And granted, it's a lot of times Simon Pegg, but I'm drawing a blank now. What's his name in Scott Pilgrim? Michael Cera.
Oh.
Yeah.
But Michael Cera, he has that natural comedic talent, and even just watching him, like he can do little things and be entertaining to watch. And everybody in this film is so good, but Baby is just very bland to me and very kind of boring. And that was my biggest knock on this film. I just didn't like the casting with him.
I wonder if that was kind of by design, though, because you're talking about flipping things on their head. Like, Ryan Gosling in Drive, his character was kind of like that stereotypical Clint Eastwood man with no name style, where although they don't really say a whole lot, they still take charge. They still have that manly man role. Like he didn't get pushed around in that film. Whereas in this one, you have probably, you have a guy, they didn't really identify his age, but you would assume he's on the young side because I think in real life that actor is only 23. 19 or 20, 21, so he's not as grizzled as your John Hamm's character or like anybody else he dealt with. So he would be one getting pushed around,
No, and
I think,
I'm fine with
maybe
him. I get what you're saying. Like I'm fine with him getting pushed around and all that, but I just don't think he's somebody I want to see on. Like he's not somebody I'm looking when he's in a scene. He's the last person I'm looking at. You know what I mean? My eyes are always drawn to everybody else. And I think, and because he's kind of the focus, especially the first half, he just didn't do a lot for me. And I feel like he was a really weak link in this. And no knock against, him personally, but it just didn't gel with me really. And, he kind of, they do kind of the musical thing where he's kind of hopping down the street. And I didn't really get kind of what they were going for when he seemed to be very focused and skilled when in the car, and then was kind of bumbling when he was out of it. Like none of that really connected, or they didn't really kind of make any good jokes about that. It was just, I don't know, something. And like the backstory, like I said, the flashbacks with his character, like kind of everything surrounding him I felt was very, I don't know, just kind of almost bland.
Like it would have almost been better to maybe just have had the literal. Is what they showed in the trailers for the movie. If you've watched any film or TV, and they just like the kind of a throwaway line where Kevin Spacey talks about he has to hum the drum. It's like that really could have just used that entire line of dialogue and not had done the flashback. I mean, the flashback. But that if you wanted to cut that out, then I think you just keep that line in there as it already is. Just have that kind of as like a throwaway thing to explain why he does what he is, and then go with it.
And again, that's a minor thing. I'm just kind of thinking it more. I'm kind of bringing up that's one specific thing to point to as to what, like, kind of how Edgar Wright a lot of times seems like he approaches his things. And in this, it kind of plays some things straight, which is totally fine. I get that's kind of the point of this film a little bit, but there's always an opportunity to do something more interesting. You know what I mean? And maybe that was a specific choice he made, but for me, just based on his character and who's playing him and all that, it kind of all that stuff around Baby was just very, I don't know, kind of bland. And I was fine with the relationship being straightforward. There's no real drama there between them. There's situational drama with some of the characters, which I thought was great. And I'm okay that they kind of, there's not a lot of back and forth with them. Like, oh, she's mad and they're having hard time with their relationship or anything like that because of his job. Like, I'm totally fine that it didn't dig into that. I get that was meant to be straightforward. And I kind of like that it was just this classical little, almost like a Bonnie and Clyde thing. But yeah, I mean, that was my major knock against it really, is just him. I just didn't think he was a strong lead at all. And of course, it hurts the overall film. But like I said, once everybody else comes in and it becomes more of an ensemble piece, and I can sit there and listen to Jamie Foxx and Kevin Spacey and John Hamm and all of them argue and stuff, like, that is phenomenal. Like, 9 out of 10 with the action and all that, like, or 9.5. Like, it's very, very good. But the Baby stuff, when it's kind of focused on him, that's kind of the weak link with me, really. And honestly, like, and I'm not even saying it's all his fault as an actor too. Like, maybe he's just not adept at kind of playing that type of role. But like Jamie Foxx, I was thinking about Jamie Foxx watching this and how good he was in this film. And he was almost to that effect in Django Unchained, I think, because I thought he was a little bit more boring in that film than I thought he was going to be, but
I guess the one thing I can say in the film I did like with the lead character and Deborah is, or Baby and Deborah, is that, like, they're not from the South, but their Southern accents weren't like cringeworthy.
No, they were good. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't to the level that some of the smaller characters in The Walking Dead or other shows.
Yeah, I like them having a Southern
people.
Yeah.
Yeah, it worked. It didn't feel like, hey man, I'm gonna be Baby Driver. Heard, like, we watch movies where people literally have accents like that. Like me trying to do a British accent, it's not going to work.
Yeah,
but they pulled it off convincingly. It sounded right.
Well, I mean, too, like I said, without spoilers. I guess in a second we go into our final review scores and get into spoilers. Like the thing that, like, a lot of these movies have to balance when you get like a heist film or a crime film is you have to have a balance of the protagonist being involved in crime while still being somebody you can root for. And a lot of movies toe that line pretty well, some don't, and just end up with characters you're like, yeah, I really don't care what happens. And with this one, like the character Baby, like, it was more that I was interested in the more charismatic characters around Baby than him himself. Like, you still wanted to see, like, the cool chases and him get out of stuff. But like,
I still want to see him be a badass, and it was fine when he was driving. But when he wasn't in a car, it was just like, this is whatever.
But like I was more interested in seeing the interplay with the other characters, like Jamie Foxx's character and John Hamm, than I was really seeing Baby himself. And like the relationship he had with Deborah, like, I'm sure a lot of people thought that was cute and it worked. And, it wasn't unconvincing. It just, the amount of screen time they had together wasn't so significant that you're really super invested in what was going on there. You're more like, at least I was a little bit more invested in the relationship between him and like his foster father in the movie, who was like deaf and wheelchair bound, I think, and like that was a little bit more easy to immediately grasp onto, just because the circumstances alone would make you have more sympathy or empathy for the character than like, you know, when he has a girlfriend that knows he's up to something and, you know, is involved with it. But like, I think that it towed the line well enough that you still liked the character of Baby, and, you know, there was still enough going on that you were, you know, in his corner. But like I said, I was more interested in the interplay off the other characters, because that was the really entertaining part, was this kind of stoic, quiet manner played off of these other more electric, sarcastic, or, you know, outspoken characters. That was the part that was really what drove the interest for me. Yeah. So I guess we can move into our scores and then get into spoilers real quick. So kicking off our rating. So I guess Derek, will start with you. What would you give this movie out of 10?
Well, to me, like the 3, this is not that this means much of anything, but like of all the movies I've seen this year, new releases, this is in my top 3. You know, and my top 3 would be Get Out, Logan, and Baby Driver. All kind of like genre pieces, you know. But there's so much about this film I loved. It wasn't a movie I really had like good or bad feelings about. I wasn't excited for it, but wasn't not excited for it. It was just kind of something I was like, it looks good. It could be interesting. You know, we go in there and it's just an awesome experience, because it's like I said, it's just kind of like Logan. It's a story I've seen 20, 30, 40 times. You know, it's nothing new. There's always these heist movies and something happens, you know. But it's the way that it's told and the story and the character, all of it works for me really well. You know, and also, I mean, I love Drive, and I know that this and Drive are, you know, it's in the same like genre, but completely different storytelling and stuff like that. The same. Drive is one of my favorite movies I've ever watched. Might even be up there in my personal top 5. You know, perfect film. You know, just like Logan, I loved it, but it just had 1 or 2 things that I didn't like. So I mean, to me, this is like right. Like, I can't give it a 10, but a 9.5 is not quite high enough. So I go with like a 9.7.
Okay.
There's no rules on this podcast.
No rules, just right.
Yeah, you can give it a 9.71234 if you want. So 9.7.
I can't justify a 10, but I couldn't justify like too much lower than that.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess I'll go next and we'll do Sean. So if I was to give this movie a score, so right now, like I said, the Rotten Tomatoes is at 97%, the Metacritic is at 86%, and the IMDb score is at 8.4 out of 10. And I give the movie 8.5 out of 10. Like, I really enjoy it. I need to rewatch it more over time just to see exactly if that score could go up some. But I really enjoyed it, and it was like a fun movie that I enjoyed, and it was something that, you know, a movie that wasn't a sequel, a franchise film, an adaptation of an existing book. It was an original concept, even if it wasn't, like, the story itself wasn't super original and like a mind-bending high concept thing. The movie was an original story that wasn't being adapted from anything. It had a good cast that wasn't full of, like, you know, super A-list Tom Cruise, Robert Downey Jr. actors. It was, you know, actors you've seen on TV. I mean, Jamie Foxx is a huge star, but and Kevin Spacey, they're both huge stars, but they're not like I said, they're not a Tom Cruise or like a big action, you know, Bruce Willis lead, you know, action franchise character. So
what if Bruce Willis would have played Baby, but he was like supposed to be 20? I think that would have been great.
And, you know, so you saw that stuff. So I'm glad to see more movies come out that aren't just franchise sequels or something like that. The only thing I would say is, like, you know, like, this is, I think I like this better than The World's End from Edgar Wright. In terms of where it falls in the rest of his filmography, I need to watch it again because I really like Scott Pilgrim, Shaun of the Dead, and Hot Fuzz. Yeah. And whereas, you know, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz are a little bit more straightforward in the things they were, you know, pointing fun at and playing up. Like, this one was more of a straight movie that fits in the genre that it's part of. It's not really playing on the genre to any real extent or to the level those other movies did. So I think it's, you know, like I said, it ranks somewhere up there in its following. I need to rewatch it to figure out where it fits. But as of right now, I give it 8.5 because I really liked it. It's a movie I think people should go out and see just to support movies that aren't franchises or sequels. It's not like one of my favorite movies of all time, but on rewatches, it could go up in my estimation, especially seeing how the choreographed stuff works out on like multiple rewatches.
Yeah, I mean, Edgar Wright's films, I mean, his films as a director, I've probably rewatched almost more than anybody's. Like Hot Fuzz, I watched Shaun of the Dead a ton until Hot Fuzz came out. Then I watched that a ton. Then I watched Scott Pilgrim a ton. And World's End, I've watched that several times, but not nearly as much as those others. And Hot Fuzz, I think that's his masterpiece, really. But I'm probably right there with you. Like for me, on the first watch, it falls under Hot Fuzz and Shaun of the Dead and Scott Pilgrim, and it lands somewhere around The World's End. I don't really know where it falls because there's a lot I really do love about The World's End. But yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I want to watch it a lot more because it is good. And I actually, if I would have had more time, I probably would have seen it again before the podcast. Just because it was a really good movie. And now that I kind of know what to expect with Baby and some other things, I wondered if, I would kind of enjoy it more the second time. This is still definitely a film I want to get as much as I had like any qualms about it. And normally it's like the bad movies I try to find something good about. And this movie's really good and it's Edgar Wright. So I was surprised to find something kind of this quote unquote damning about it. I didn't expect that really. But having said that, yeah, it's still probably definitely, I would think one of my top 5 movies of the year.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll maybe get knocked out of that, but I wouldn't expect it to be lower than top 10. And yeah, I could see this going up if I really got into the tracks and really kind of fell in love with some of the music on rewatches, but I give it like an 8,
Yeah.
That's kind of what I was thinking walking out of it and thought about it more and was like, yeah, I mean, my feelings are kind of still the same. Some things I wouldn't say annoyed me more, but I kind of thought about more, but at the same time, some parts I thought about more and I liked it more, but yeah, I'd give it an 8.
Yep. So it gets a 9.7, 8.5, and 8. And I think, once again, with me, it would fall in my top 5 now for sure. Just see how it shakes up the rest of the year. But yeah, so that was our review of Baby Driver. Before we go into any spoilers, I don't think there'll be many spoilers. There's not a ton of stuff that really needs to be discussed.
I just got one cameo I really liked.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, I can't think of a spoiler stuff for me.
Yep. So if you're listening to the podcast via iTunes, you can do us a huge favor and go out and leave a review that helps other people find the podcast and helps us move up the charts. So we'd much appreciate that. If you're listening via YouTube or any other format, you can leave a comment because we always enjoy seeing YouTube comments. There's a ton of great ones we get through there. Or you can always email us at podcast@housebyvideostore.com, and we always look forward to any emails we can get there to check out. So if you have questions, suggestions, difference of opinions, we can read it out in the podcast if you want. So those are the ways you can reach us. You can find all the work we're doing at housebyvideostore.com. You can find links there to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all of our social media accounts. Make sure to follow us for sure on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. There's a teaser trailer for our short film After the Slasher now that you can watch on our Facebook page or on YouTube. And we're currently, the short film's been submitted to some film fests. So we're going to see what happens to those, and then that'll determine the release date. So at the latest, it'll be released in mid-October. If it doesn't get into some of them, then maybe earlier. And there's another short film we're going to be shooting soon that Chad's actually directing, who's been on the podcast once or twice before, and who helps run the site. So that'll be shooting here soon as well. Don't know exactly what the release date strategy is for that. I guess it kind of depends on festival stuff like that as well. But so we have more original content coming up, and then maybe 1 or 2 other shorts before the end of the year. So hopefully we'll have more original content out. So make sure to follow us on Facebook and YouTube to see all that type of stuff.
And again, if you're into Twin Peaks, follow us on YouTube because we got our discussion videos every week that there's a new episode, which should be, I guess, every week until it ends at this point. Yep. There was not a new episode this week due to the holiday. And people seem to respond to those videos and or just hate the way we dress or act or look or talk or live our lives, apparently, or how they assume we live our lives. It's interesting. So check those videos out if you're a fan of Twin Peaks. There's a lot to unpack in that new season.
But then if you find us specifically in the internet, you can find me on Twitter at will_droid.
And I'm at BeliveInSean on Twitter.
And then Derek is on, I believe, Twitter and Instagram at MetaWorldDerek, and he had to jump off real quick. So now we're going to move into spoiler discussion for Baby Driver. So if you have not seen the movie, now's the time to head out. So we're going to discuss spoilers starting now. So yeah, the spoiler talk, I mean, there's not a ton really to talk about. It's just one thing I always wonder in movies like this. So, at the end of the film, once Baby and Deborah get to like the police roadblock and he gives himself up, like how does she also not get charged with something is what I'm wondering.
It's probably a case of like, oh, he had a gun in there. He was taking her hostage.
Well, I'm sure that he would make up some story that was like forced or coerced or whatever, but but then she's like a character witness for him when he's on trial and but I mean, she knowingly, assisted with that.
Yeah.
But I guess,
yeah, I mean, that was kind of like, I like the Bonnie and Clyde aspect where she's like just going along with it. And the relationship was straightforward, which was fine, but it was very, I don't know. Yeah. Like you said, the relationship between him and his, father, was maybe more convincing out of the gate. You know what I mean? Like it was a pre-existing thing where this is like, oh, he just met her. And a week later she's ready to, watch him murder somebody.
Yeah.
or possibly murder somebody and then take off the car with him, which is totally fine because it falls in the tradition of those films. I think that didn't bother me really at all. It was fine. But the cameo that I loved was when they were doing when they went to do Buy the Guns, Jamie Foxx and John Hamm and him.
Yeah.
And what was the woman's name? Darling?
Yeah.
The guy selling the guns was Paul Williams, who is like a singer songwriter, and he does a ton of music for films and all kinds of stuff. And anyway, he's in Phantom of Paradise as Swan, the like famous music producer, and he does the music for that film and stuff. And he's awesome in that movie. And I think that's a favorite of Edgar Wright's as well, Brian De Palma film. So it was great to see him just like pop up out of nowhere all of a sudden. As the arms dealer. So I really appreciate that because I think he does a great job, especially in a lot of his British films. Like, Hot Fuzz did a wonderful job at this. I mean, Shaun of the Dead had some great ones too in The World's End, where he just pulls up all of these actors and kind of has them come in for like a little bit part. And he kind of pulls all these actors maybe you don't normally see in this types of roles or you haven't seen in a while, just because maybe they're not in the types of films you watch. But I always appreciated that, and he was a nice little bonus in this film, for sure.
Yeah, too. Like I like the way that you kind of thought that the antagonist was going to end up being Jamie Foxx. They pull a switcheroo where it's actually John Hamm's character,
and Kevin Spacey too. You assumed he would be sending them after him, like
he kind of had a turn where he was on Baby's side and defended him and took up for him.
It almost felt like he was the father figure. You know what I mean? Like another father figure for him, which I loved.
Like a more paternal relationship.
Yeah. Like he actually was kind of, even though he was, kind of a son of a bitch, and a criminal, like at the same time, he still wanted kind of the best for Baby after he got what he wanted. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he kind of put he put Baby first in that situation. And I loved all that because that's this is a straightforward film, and it's maybe not the traditional thing Edgar Wright does as far as the way he mixes things up. But again, this is kind of what I expected out of Edgar Wright when he kind of twists things around a little bit more, and it doesn't end up how you expect. And Jamie Foxx's character gets taken out at a point where you probably don't expect it to, like you said. And then there's a very good reason for John Hamm to kind of be the lead antagonist in the final part of the film. Like I loved all of that and kind of the interplay and really the way things get twisted up at the end and things start going south really fast and it's doesn't even go south in the way you expect it,
Yeah.
I love that. I think the last part of the film, like the last like half hour or whatever is absolutely a 9 out of 10 for me, maybe a 9.5, just, I don't know if the baby stuff in the beginning will kind of, if I'll be like, okay, come on, I want to get to Jamie Foxx and John Hamm and Kevin Spacey. Like, I don't know if I'll be waiting for that on the next rewatches. I'm hoping I just enjoy it all the way through and I kind of become at peace with baby and and you know what I mean. I ended up like, hopefully this ends up being like just shy under my top 3 of Edgar Wright films, because right now it's a drop down. I think after those 3, Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Scott Pilgrim, it's a little bit of a drop down to The World's End in this. Hopefully this will get a little bit closer to those though on some rewatches.
Yep. So I think that's all I really had to discuss on spoilers. So I think that wraps up our discussion of Baby Driver. So that'll bring this episode of the House by Video Store podcast to a close. Thanks for listening.
House by the Video